Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. And welcome to another episode. Excuse that. Welcome to another episode of Tea and Coffee with Paula and
Jay. Oh, excuse me, that came out of nowhere. We are amateurs this morning. I apologize.
We? No, I'm a professional here.
I'm just waiting for the fingers.
No, there'll be no fingers.
Just waiting for the fingers. It felt like a finger moment coming.
It should have been in my head, but not.
I
not
hope
in
you're taking
IRL.
notes, everybody. Thank you very much for everybody. We had to take a day off because we had a dog escape, and we had to deal with it. we do not need this problem, and he's fine. Everything's good.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to get some technology to deal with it, but it led to a late night, which is a groggy morning.
Yes. No. Our young man, who's just a beast of a.
Let's be clear for everybody: huge dog that will take out your legs if you try and come to the living property.
Well, no, the thing is, he's a huge dog, and came home, and he was on the other side of the gate. I'm like, how'd you do that, my friend? And he was at the end of the day, he stayed home. It's not like he wandered off a couple of range roads, but no, he stayed home and followed me in with the gate and went to bed and all that stuff. But yeah, he was on the wrong side of the gate, so we had to remedy that. And the remedy will be arriving today at some point, I believe.
And it's deer season. We do not need a deer-sized dog running around out there right now. And we also have animals around us because we live rural, and there's cattle and goats and other dogs. So yeah, we had to deal with that. So thanks a lot for your patience around that. And to those that reached out and said, "Oh, I hope everything's fine." It is now.
Yeah. Yeah, but he seems to have a knack now. Because even last night when I left to go take the boys to an event, Jacob and I stopped, like hung back a bit and just watched. And we saw him come up to the gate, but nothing. So I was like, okay.
And he's a very loyal dog because he hangs out by the gate waiting for us to come home and then follows the car in. He's a very loyal dog.
Yeah,
but we need to keep him on the correct side of the
Yeah, exactly. He's not a roamer. He's very loyal, especially he and our other dog is very loyal to Jacob. They always watch him and follow him anytime he's potting around. So yeah, so good dog, not a wanderer, but certainly likes to sit and watch the world go by on the other side of the gate.
And we're training him to go after blue hair, just to be clear. Blue hair, he'll go after you. I'm kidding.
But don't come down our road.
Yes. It's a long trek from the roads to the property. So that's a lot of opportunities for the dogs to get you. And but we want to make sure he's safe. Nobody's hurt. We don't need an accident on the road or anything like that. And as you see the lights flicker, the generator's kicked in. So we may have a couple of flickers here. But thank you very much to everybody who reached out and had some concerns. Everything okay? Yes, everything's okay. Levine family is safe and secure. Yes. We just need to make sure all members of our family are safe and secure.
Oh, and that he's saying he's a member of the family. Dumb dog.
He is a dumb dog.
He is.
He poops in the wrong spot. We're going to work on that.
Yeah. And that's the remedy is going to be fixing that too.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Little pet peeves humans have.
Well, it's like, welcome back home.
Here's the poop on your driveway. When you have acres upon acres to do your business on.
And I think he got Cece to do it too now. So they're both doing it.
But it's new for this year. This is the subject of conversation today, folks. The Levine homestead is how our dogs, as of this year, even though we've had them for many years, have decided to start pooping on the driveway this summer. Once we got back.
Maybe they missed us. Maybe they thought that's why we left.
This is the welcome mat.
The present. And as it's just like a slalom course, we're trying to drive around them and make sure we don't hit anything. So yeah, we're working on. But the most important thing was he got out.
Yeah,
so we can't have that.
Yeah, you can't have that. This wouldn't be good.
No, especially if somebody got hurt. More importantly, because there's a road there, it's gravel, and last thing we want is somebody trying to dodge them and they get hurt. Yeah, we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And he is a really big dog. Somebody could mistake him for a deer. Who knows?
Yeah, no, exactly.
So thanks again to everybody. And we didn't sleep in, but we were dealing with all our little homestead issues. So there's the update, Martin.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. There's our update for the homestead. All right. And then another update. This one bugs me a bit. Didn't want to have to announce it, but it looks like we're moving that show again.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
so we've had the tickets on sale for over a month now. It doesn't seem like the audience is interested in talking about COVID anymore. I get it. All those who want to know more about it do, and those that don't care don't care. So
or just moved on because a lot
no,
of
they
people
don't
were
care.
affected.
Specifically, I'm talking about the group that doesn't care.
Okay.
Doesn't care. The other ones that wanted to know have learned what they want to know and have moved on. So I spoke to all the attendees, and they all agreed that it's probably best that we go ahead and release the video separately. So the Dan Hartman video, so Sean Hartman. So we're working on that now. And we're going to move the event, it looks like January 10th, to include conversations with a bunch of lawyers about the foundational and fundamental truths. This is not about separation. It's not about doing that, because that's happening everywhere else already. This is the other conversations. Like, if this thing doesn't go to referendum, what should we be doing anyways, and not just in Alberta but across Canada? So we're scheduling it around Bruce Party's availability. So it looks like January 10th is when we're going to be able to get this done and have him here in person. And we've got some excellent lawyers lined up to join us as well. Sean Buckley, Leighton Gray, John Carpay. These are all people we're speaking to check their schedules, to come and have these conversations. Because we want to give Albertans a panel where we can talk about everything that's happening today, fundamentally, and how we can go ahead and start doing things now. If there is a referendum for separation, what happens then? If there is no vote, what should we be focused on? Because you can put a lot of eggs into one basket and then be disappointed. So even if things don't go in the direction that some people are working towards, that's what we want to talk about. This is not an APP event. APP has a lot of events going on, so you're more than welcome to go check them out for that subject matter. This is going to be everything else that people want to talk about. So lots of lawyers on the stage, Catherine Kowalczyk as well. We're reaching out to a few more because we want to cover a whole bunch of different bases. Leighton Gray with Indigenous issues. He's really comfortable with that. Fighting government, he's very comfortable with that. How do you go and take on the government? You use the laws the way they are, etc. And then Sean Buckley, as you know, he's very strong in the health side of things, but more importantly, he's also constitution side of things, and he wants to talk fundamental law, what we can do there. So it's going to be, I think it's coming together as a very good event.
Great panel.
To come and have your answers, your questions answered, and see where we're going to go. Because frankly, if you're not prepared for all outcomes, you're not prepared.
Yeah, no, agree. And I'm really looking forward to it as well, because I think that's something a lot of people want, is to have some questions answered, and some can't be. But legally and going forward, like, what are potential options? I definitely think people would like to know, and having a strong panel to discuss, to cover potential variety of questions, I think is great. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and Kim has a question there. Who do lawyers swear an oath to? Well, I was in Ontario when I took the paralegal course, and I did have to pass their bar for paralegals there, and I became regulated and licensed by at the time it was the Upper Canada Law Society. Now it's the Ontario Law Society. My oath was to the justice system and my clients. So I had to take an oath to them because that's who I represent. So upholding justice with truth and honesty and integrity, that's what the oath was for. It wasn't to a king. It wasn't to the Law Society. It wasn't to the courts themselves. It was to the system of justice and the my clients. Because for first and foremost, those are the two things. You got to uphold the integrity of the justice system, and you got to represent your clients. That was a paralegal one, and I would be surprised it was very different for lawyers as well.
Yeah, you would hope that would be the justice system as a whole, but anyone within the justice system, and even representing it, would be where they're swearing their oath to.
Yeah, most of the training I went through was to uphold the integrity of the justice system and the trust in it, because that's the only thing that keeps it together. If people stopped going to courts, like everybody stopped going to courts and believing in courts, the whole thing would just fall apart. It's a very loosely based system that's completely built on trust. So if that's gone, you don't have a justice system. So that was part of the training. And there was other stuff that I certainly rejected, like critical race theory. But this was the part that was presented to us heavily. So if you even stole $1 of trust money, that, for example, that's enough to get you into serious trouble. You could go out to a bar fight and beat somebody up on your own time. Okay. You do stupid things on your own time, that's fine. But you touch the integrity of the system and the trust of the client, you can get in some trouble.
Yeah, as you should.
As you should. All right, so there's going to be lots of stuff like that, and also Constitution. What can we do to change things? What can we do to leverage things? How things have been abused, like the Charter and sometimes Section 1, and things like that. And with the notwithstanding clause in Alberta being used, we can even talk about that. It's going to be mostly audience-led with some small presentations from everybody.
Yeah, so we'll keep you posted on the confirmed date, because I got to work on that today.
Yeah, we're working with January 10th right now, tentatively, because that is the date that Bruce can be here. So we're going to see what we can do, but we'll keep you posted. But December 6th, December 13th, well, you don't even have to refund a ticket.
Yeah.
We will be moving that event.
Yeah, but we'll see if we can keep Bruce in Alberta.
Yeah, we're just going to pay for one way of his ticket.
Yeah,
that's it. That's the trick. We'll get him here and then we'll let him know. Surprise! Welcome home.
Yeah.
But anyways, let's go ahead and move on. And so where we left off on Wednesday. And by the way, having Jason Christoph on and then disappearing for a day probably freaked out a couple people.
Yes.
He's like, where'd they go?
Yeah, where'd they
reprogramming.
Go? Oh my goodness.
The frogs are gay. The frogs are gay.
Oh,
that's as close. My Alex Jones and my Donald Trump are pretty similar.
Pretty similar. It just depends on the volume used. That's it.
The frogs are gay.
The frogs are gay.
The frogs are gay. There you go, folks. There's your entertainment for the morning. All right, let's jump back into it. So, of course, if you're in Alberta and you don't live under a rock, you're fully aware that Danielle Smith is using a notwithstanding clause. And it's upsetting a small group of people. Because, frankly, the three laws that she's protecting are to protect children so that you don't go ahead and mutilate their bodies as children. You do what you want as an adult. And this is for 15 and under, to be clear.
Yeah.
So 16 and up are not part of this. So the people that are pushing really hard against this are very crazy people because they believe that a 15-year-old can make life-altering decisions. We don't agree. We don't think that's right. And by the way, we're on the side of let's not put chemicals and scalpels on our children. Or chemicals in and scalpels on. That's the side we're on. And the other side wants to chop them up and full of chemicals. On this note, though, I am putting together a panel for tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Mountain, where we're going to have this conversation. Blaine will be joining us. Remember Blaine's last name?
Blaine, like Balachuk, something like
that. Yeah. Jack, who has been on the show as well. Conservative.
Hold on. I'm going to bring it up.
Yeah. And Mia Hutchins, Mia Hughes. Yeah, she'll be joining us as well as we have the conversation of why this is so important. So you can check in on that special episode for tomorrow as we have that panel. But for the rest of Canada,
Badiuk, Badiuk.
There you go.
Blaine will be joining.
For the rest of Canada, there's three laws that Danielle Smith's UCP party passed. One was to protect children from puberty blockers under the age of 15. If you didn't start already, you can't start now. And surgeries to transition or mutilate yourself to something else. It's not even another sex. You can't do that in Alberta anymore if you're under the age of 16, so 15 and under. Parents will be notified if their children are starting to use different pronouns and different names. Parents have to be notified now. And the last one is safe spaces in sports. So only biological females, women. I hate adding these words to it.
Yeah, I hear you.
Women. Use me. People like you are in sports. So these three laws, of course, came under challenge. At least one of them certainly did. And to be clear, the notwithstanding clause doesn't remove rights. What the notwithstanding clause does is it removes the lower court from deciding on it. So the court can't go ahead and remove this. This upsets some people. But here's the thing. We have lawmakers, we have elections, we put these people in place, they make the laws. And then one unelected appointed judge can strike them. This is what the notwithstanding clause was designed for, was to stop the judiciary from overriding the legislation created by the democracy, the democratically elected people. So that's what this is doing. For the second time in Alberta, Daniel Smith is using it. First time was put students back in school. This time is now hands off to kids and protect parental rights and protect women's rights. Women have the right to be safe in sport.
Yep.
No reason to be punching and hitting and in their spaces and locker rooms if you're a man. Yeah. So that's what this is going on. And so here's my post, because it certainly upset quite a few. For anyone in Alberta that's upset with Daniel Smith for using the notwithstanding clause to protect children, again, are welcome to book a one-way flight on Woke Airlines to any destination they like. Enter coupon code BILL9 or a free box of tissues and a bottle of milk. That should help them a little bit. Every once in a while, you'll see these little funny posts about from me, but I do mean this. Like, if you really don't like what Alberta's doing and you really think it's necessary to harm children, go somewhere else, because Alberta is going to protect them.
Yes.
We stand with that one. Jason Christoph, that was an excellent episode. Even better than the episode was the locals chat. So if you want to come and join those conversations, because there's no limitation there. We're not worried about YouTube or anything else. So we get into it. You can go to thelevineshow.com to get yourself started on that. You'll end up at locals, and then you can watch the extended episode like we'll do today. Yep. Become a member. Make sure you share and subscribe this out as well, because it's very helpful to us. Appreciate that. So Viva reposted my post about the CFIA email. Shows that the flock was eligible for genetic exception, undercuts the mandatory call narrative. We went through this last week. And thanks, Viva, for sharing it, because the slaughter was purely punitive, is the way he puts it. Which means they were being punished. They were being punished for standing up to the government. So thanks, Viva, for putting that out there. Here's new information. So I'm working with Katie directly and asking her for specific stuff. So when I posted this other one, it was an email from the CFIA saying that she was eligible for it, just needed to apply. So a lot of people said, well, did she? Well, here we go. But she did. So what we ended up getting back from Katie was the rejection letter. So you can go ahead and read the rejection letter from the CFIA. So she did apply for the exemption. Some people were implying that she didn't do that. She absolutely did do that. And so to be clear, she wasn't granted and then it wasn't removed or revoked. It was offered and then denied. So that's the process of the exemption. So I want to go ahead and take you through this as quick as I can, because sometimes I can get verbose. But
no.
Yeah, surprise. So breaking proof, CFIA denied exemption, calls ostriches poultry, orders final no appeal call. Here is a CFIA decision letter dated January 10th, 2025. Decision spelled correct. Point that out to my wife, because that's a word I get wrong a lot. The CFIA officially denied the Universal Ostrich Farm's request for an exemption from destruction, and the reason laid out in the decision raised serious concerns about science, due process, and Canada's internal obligation or international obligations. And by the way, in order to apply, you have to provide all this stuff for them to go through. There is no judge. It's just the CFIA. And as you're going to see here shortly, all decisions are final with no appealability. So this is something we spoke about a lot. Why were they in the federal court? It wasn't for appeal of the decision. It was to challenge the authority of the decision, because there is no appeal available. So anyways, we'll get into that in a bit. Number one, CFIA's entire justification hinges on calling ostriches poultry. So as you go through the letter, they classify them as poultry, and then they use the poultry rules and laws to go ahead and deny the exception and then go ahead with the call. There's a fantastic discussion on part of this thread on whether or not ostriches are poultry. And here's the thing, it's just like the definition of women being changed to include non-women. The same thing's happening here. They're using definitions and words to go ahead and do what they want. And by the way, you left the door open.
I know, I noticed.
Yeah, go ahead, squeeze away.
Okay, cool.
Because this is how they're doing it. And I have a really good researcher working on this, going through a lot of the legal around this. And there'll be some announcements around a working group that we're putting together. But what's important here is it seemed like the the farm was working with the definition and trying to get the exception. And the way the letters worded and the way the processes are is they kind of force you into accepting the term poultry. You can't really fight against it. So this is part of the problem because these are not poultry. So I'll continue here. The decision states that the CFIA must remain aligned with WOAH's definition and claims that ostriches are poultry under the definition, their definition. This is the foundation for the CFIA's refusal to grant an exception, but globally ostriches are treated as ratites. Just follow along.
I don't know. I don't know.
Ratites?
I don't know how to pronounce that word.
Okay. Not chickens. And many nations, South Africa, the European Union, Australia, maintain entirely separate ratites, sorry folks, health and genetic frameworks. And that's not a word I can avoid either, by the way. Precisely because ostriches are not poultry in biology, behavior, biology, or agricultural regulation. The CFIA leaned on an administrative definition, not scientific classification. Number 2, the decision is final and not subject to appeal. This is really where I am frustrated because this is the government giving themselves unlimited power. You can't argue it. Then this is even where Pierre Poilievre should have stood up and said, listen, we're not touching the ostrich portion of this, but the property rights portion and the ability to have due process we can speak about. And they didn't. But this is where I want to highlight it again. The CFIA declared its ruling is final, cannot be challenged, and will not be reconsidered. This means that farmers equipped with the science have zero procedural recourse, no reconsideration, no independent review, no appeal. That should freak you all, guys. This removes due process entirely, leaving an agency with unilateral power over a unique genetic line of animals. And one agency and all, like, this is not how we should allow the government to act. They do not have unfettered power. Number 3, CFIA ignored all scientific evidence of genetic value. Despite acknowledging exemption criteria for rare and valuable genetics, the CFIA rejected the farm's evidence without requesting or performing genomic testing, while simultaneously requiring genomic testing as proof. What a conundrum. There's a problem there. We need genetic proof, but we won't do the test.
Yeah.
They also dismissed research from, Struthio Bioscience. We'll just go with it.
Yeah. I think Struthio is a good one. Yeah.
Okay. Findings of immune biosolutions, letters from Dr. Yashiro
Takamoto.
No,
I know, but it's
Takamoto.
Yeah,
Okay.
Takamoto.
Sounds like a car company. Japan, documentation of decade-long selective breeding. Remember, these are not chickens. These things live for decades. Evidence of unique IgY antibody lines with proven antiviral applications. This was all provided to the CFIA to back the argument that they are genetically rare and valuable, but it was ignored. They dismissed it all. CFIA did not consult Canada's own animal genetic resources experts beyond surface level review and performed no genomic evaluation of the birds they ordered destroyed. They didn't even look. As part of their exception to say, you got to prove it.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't let the test happen. They didn't do a test. Cool, David's here already. So we got 6 more minutes. Number 4, the CFIA admits it does not consider individual test results. Listen to this one, folks.
Yeah.
And this is something that Dr. Pellick brought up and Nicholas Holstrom as well. The letter states the CFIA does not consider individual bird test results at all when deciding whether to destroy an entire flock. This is astonishing. No proof the 2 birds died of H5N1. No evidence of outbreak in the remaining about 400 birds. And no illness observed for months. PCR thresholds likely too high to confirm active infection. And yet none of this mattered because CFIA policy treated all birds the same regardless of real-world biology
Epidemiology.
See, it's not easy for all of us.
No, not
you know
at
what
all.
it means. Number 5, CFIA blames WOAH to justify stamping out the flock rather than evaluating emerging science of For Canada's own genetic resource policy, the CFIA claims its hands are tied by the WOAH obligations, but WOAH does not forbid exemptions, nor does it prevent member nations from treating rarities differently.
Retites, apparently.
Retites?
Yes.
Retites? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Retites.
Linda.
This is a policy choice, not a requirement. Retites. Bottom line, the CFIA had an exemption pathway. The ostriches met the initial criteria. The CFIA reversed course, insulating itself from challenge and blame an administrative definition to justify the destruction of the genetically unique, scientifically valuable flock. So the science does not matter. The genetics did not matter. The exemption criteria did not matter. Only the authority did.
Yeah, just because CFIA said so.
Because I said so.
Yep.
That's what this comes down to. But the decision was final. The CFIA ordered the flock destroyed, and Canadians are left with a troubling question. Why did an agency choose bureaucracy over evidence and eliminate a unique genetic resource that could have advanced both animal and human health? To be clear, they were being used for research for COVID prevention, not vaccine, but COVID prevention of the spike protein and destruction. This is what was going on between 22 and 24 or so. And then when they survived, I presume it wasn't avian flu that showed up at the farm. After they survived that, they would have been valuable for other flocks to learn how they can survive. And as we learned from David Speaker on Monday, they actually had the flu go through there in 2010. This was 2 years before the stamping out policy was put in place in 2012. So they weren't stamped out, but they survived and lived. And this is what he believes is why they survived the second time, because they actually developed immunity to it. So all of this together does raise a question: were they valuable? Yeah. And the evidence is leaning in that direction for sure.
Yeah, and there's a comment here in Rumble. CFIA don't care. CFIA destroyed rare heritage sheep for a common sheep
I think 200 of them.
Yeah, several years ago. So they're known for this.
Yep.
For the good of the people.
No, it's and this is what Jason Christoph said. This is normalizing and getting you conditioned to the idea that once there's a positive test, then you can call. Yeah. And right now it's animals. Next could be us.
Dun dun dun.
Right. So we got a couple more minutes before we bring our awesome, flexible, very understanding guest on, because he allowed me to move it from yesterday to today. So here we go. So here's some of the pushback to Alberta's Bill 9. This woman here, Anna, and I don't know if I gender neutral, or I don't know if I did anything wrong there, but there you go. It's calling a heartbreaking moment in Alberta and a devastating moment in Canadian history. For only the second time, the provincial government has invoked the notwithstanding clause to suspend the charter rights of transgender and gender diverse people, targeting youth with policies designed to erase their dignity and deny their freedom.
Goodness.
BS.
Oh my, what horrible people.
Yeah, no, this is just straight up BS.
Yeah.
Nobody's being targeted, especially people with mental illness that have gender dysphoria. They need help. They don't need to be. Remember, this is for 15 and under.
Yes.
So if you are 16 and up, you can start exploring these paths. And if you're an adult, you can certainly start doing anything you want.
Yeah.
So these people are kind of leaving that part out because they're making it also seem like trans adults are being targeted in some way. That's not even true.
And it's not even targeted. It's being protected.
There's no targeting.
This is protection.
So, hey, Anna, stop blocking children's puberty, blocking parents' rights, and blocking women's sports. And we wouldn't need the laws to protect them. What's truly heartbreaking is you're calling for the harming of children, especially girls. Alberta is a safer place for everyone now. And that's where I stand on that one. I wish we didn't even need the laws to begin with. Yeah. But they're skipping that step. They totally are.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of that kind of rhetoric out there. I think we got time for one more here. And this is all that people are talking about.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation about ostriches and the children.
Yep. Bill 9 as well. So although this is me, Casey has me blocked. It's always a surprise when I go to see a comment and then I can't do anything like underneath. It doesn't let me do anything. I'm like, oh, I'm blocked. Look at that. Okay. I don't even know who you are. I never crossed your path before. But anyways, I can still correct her because she says Alberta didn't vote for charter overrides. Alberta didn't vote for a tax on trans kids. Alberta didn't vote for gutting public health care and overriding doctors and courts. This is the narrative that they're going to run with. Okay. And they also run with the whole the children are not safe because they're going to hurt themselves. Telling them that is part of how that happens. So you need to stop saying that to them and get them the care that they need. So I put, although this person has me blocked, I'll still correct her. You don't speak for me, Cassandra. This is exactly what I voted for, and I'm thrilled Danielle Smith is protecting children. Too bad you don't like that. So what we'll do is we'll leave it on that because there's still more to cover coming up, but we can get to that tomorrow. I'm really Monday. Get to that Monday. Yeah, get to that Monday. I'm really excited to have our guest on here today, David Knight Legg. He worked with the provincial government, with the Jason Kenney government. He worked in investment and security, or securities, like the investment side of things. Oh, I got one hair. I got my Homer hair sticking up.
The Homer hair.
Yep. And a very wise man. He's been sharing lots on X. And without further ado, let me go ahead and bring him in. Good morning, David.
Hey, good morning to you.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Finally, we meet. I see you on.
It's good to meet you, Jason.
A lot. Yeah, no, finally we meet. It's great to see you. And thanks a lot for allowing me to move yesterday around. I really needed to address something here on the homestead, and we've got it all covered. So thanks for your concern.
Good. I hope everything's okay. That's the number one thing. So
yeah.
So I'll give you an update because there we go. Thanks for getting that in there. I was trying to get that done. Yeah, we had a dog escape and we needed to deal with it. We didn't want him harmed, anything else harmed. We got animals all around us. We don't want them harmed. So we needed to address that. It led to a very tired morning. So I appreciate that.
Well, one of the funniest things growing up in ranch country down in southern Alberta was when one cow could outwit 15 guys with cabs and trucks and walkie-talkies, and they'd have to figure out where that guy went. But they would, animals have a unique way of just shutting everything down for a day or two.
Yeah,
they do.
They have that, and for a big dog to get through the gate, under the gate, over
We're not sure how I did it yet.
We still don't know yet. So
no one can figure it.
Sleuthing and watch him yesterday, but no luck. But
yeah, Betsy the cow would be like wandering down Highway 3, and no one had any idea how it was possible for her to have gotten out.
And I see that. I see the odd post on Facebook like, "There's a cow or there's a horse on the highway," and they'll take a picture like, "Who does this animal belong to?"
Yeah, we know pigs and other animals.
Just decided to go rogue. Just something occurred.
I've had enough.
And I wouldn't change a thing. I love this.
They're the conservatives of the cow family. They're just out there.
So you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience, David?
Sure. I mean, look, I started putting things on X after spending a bit of time in Alberta politics. I came back after a career, in a tech-oriented startup, and then doing some banking out in Asia. And my good friend Jason Kenney, who had been defense minister, invited me to come back, and he said, "Look, in only 4 years, the NDP has totally destroyed the public fisc. They borrowed more money in that 4-year period than all previous Alberta governments combined." And he said, if you can do it, I need you to come in and just help restructure things and fix it and get a program going. So we did that. We won a landslide, and then we started working on, immediately cutting taxes. A lot of people don't know this, actually, Jason. We cut that corporate tax from 12 to 8. And when it was 12, we were making about $4.5 billion on it as a province. And at 8, lower tax rate, over $7 billion. And a lot of people, we were in a lot of heat when we did that. Unfortunately, COVID, swept through, and that changed the dynamics around what we were doing economically and kind of our freedom agenda. It also changed the dynamics for Jason very directly because he was trying to juggle a lot of those COVID things. I was more on the libertarian side in terms of, just wanting us to roll with the Great Barrington Declaration and the Swedish model and other things. But it was a tough time. And as I went through that, and I had some incidents happen where I was sort of targeted by the NDP. And one of the things that I just wish we'd had more of was just more free speech, more shows like yours, more conversations, more just open expression of what we thought, why we thought it, what we were doing, why we were doing it. So I started posting things on X about a year and a half ago. So I put it out there, and then people tell me what they think about it. So That's it.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed your posts, and for quite some time you would send them to me directly, and I'm like, who's this David guy? And then I look into it, I'm like, oh wow, he's quite outspoken, and he's got a lot on the go.
I didn't know how Twitter was supposed to work. So I've actually had there's a good guy named Pleb Reporter, and I followed. He's got like 5 different accounts. I think 4 of them are fake. So I was busy following a fake account. He was like, "Who's this guy spamming me? You don't even follow me, buddy. Blocked." So I've had a few different. I had to learn how the whole thing was managed, but the bottom line is we just need a lot more free speech. We need a lot more engagement, and Twitter is a great place to engage in a civic conversation. And sometimes you put things out there and people tell you stuff you need to think about. There's a guy who posted back because I have an interest in obviously economic stuff and some of the cultural stuff, but also security is a really strong interest of mine. And a guy just posted back on a post I put up on the Gripen plane recently, and made some really good points, I think, about a couple things. So I love it. I love it as a place to engage. So I'm glad we met through it, and it's great to be on your show.
No, I really do appreciate it. And also your persistence, because that's kind of how it worked for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, he popped up once. I'm like, well, because it happens all the time. People send you unsolicited DMs, and I do try to go through them.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I'm a little embarrassed.
I don't
by
think
this
I was following
conversation,
you
by
yet.
the way. I sound like some desperate weird.
Well, no, here's the thing.
I
like
like your stuff, so I was like, hey, I wonder if Jason's going to like this. But also, I'll tell you what else. The other reason why you have to, if anybody's just sort of new to it, the other reason you have to DM people is once in a while somebody will give you a steer that's really smart, and then once in a while you'll send it to like, a half dozen people you respect, and they'll all say the same thing. And this happened to me just a week ago. I said this Dean Blundell guy, who I don't know at all. I just noticed I just know, I was away for a long time and I wasn't even on Twitter. So people are like, oh my God, why do you give this guy any time? Like, you're giving this guy oxygen, don't respond, and it's sort of funny, but I appreciate you taking my unsolicited DMs and giving me a steer and still letting me on your show to talk. That's great.
No, it's my
worries.
pleasure. And yeah, I know Dean Blundell. If you get targeted or blocked by him, you're doing something right. He used to be a
He
good
hasn't
radio
blocked me
host.
yet. I don't think he follows me, so he can't block me or something. But I really hope he follows me and then blocks me, because everyone else that responded to something I said, how can you speak this way about someone for being a Christian? Observant Christian is ridiculous. If you, would you permit yourself to talk this way about somebody who's an observant Muslim? Of course not. You yourself call it hate speech. And literally, Jason, everyone I said that to saying, I think this is wrong, whatever, they're just like, oh man, you're such a newbie on this platform.
You're getting used to it. No, they don't have to follow you first to block you. You can block immediately. And
okay, gotcha.
I did a recent post about him and Angie
Rasmussen.
Yeah, so they're celebrating the death of the ostriches, celebrating it. So I posted, "Father, forgive them for they know not what they do," and a whole bunch of people under my post said they know what they did. They know exactly what they did.
Oh yeah. Well, the funny thing, Jason, I used to laugh because I'm from Southern Alberta, which is of course the most sophisticated, best part of Alberta there is. But what's funny is sometimes you're out saying things and you get people from your hometown that kind of like, I knew you in diapers, buddy, pipe down. Like you'll get a lot. Sometimes it's the people that are on your team that hurt you the most.
No, fair enough. And you're almost correct. It's going to be west of Edmonton in the Breton Brazeau County area is the best part of Alberta.
Yeah,
Just
our neck of the woods with the loose dogs and loose cows.
Yep, for
That's
sure.
right.
Sometimes
it's dangerous up there at those loose dogs. We got at least our loose cows are, Our loose
he's
cows
almost
have a
as
good
big as
reason to be
a
running
deer, so
around.
that's
They're
good.
about to be made into the best steaks in the world, so they know that they gotta make a run for it.
So you've been enjoying yourself on X for the last year. You mentioned that you're friends with. Are you still friends with Jason Kenney and what he's up to
I
lately?
certainly am. I love him. We disagree on some stuff. We always have had a few disagreements. I have a lot of friends that were very frustrated. I was very frustrated by some of the dynamics around the pandemic. But I have to tell you, from his heart, he's following what he thinks is the best, the right thing, etc. He was very wiped out during that time, and I think there was just a lot went down over that period. I had friends who, were damaged by these vaccines. I have, my son was, I took time away from banking for 3 years to try and give back to a place that gave me so much, Alberta. And my son was in one of the cities that locked down very early on, Singapore. So we didn't have a chance to even connect the way we were supposed to during his school holidays and things for almost a year and a half. So yeah, I have a lot of loaded opinions about that period and about how ridiculous a lot of the federal regulations were then and are on so many things. The sort of totalitarian approach of people that are misinformed, ill-informed, and sometimes just, control freaks. And you're seeing this with one of the issues you were just covering. But yeah, I remain very close to Jason as a friend, first and foremost, and as someone whose politics I 90% agree with. And when we disagree on the 10%, we could really disagree. But I'll say this, Jason. I think one of the things, and this relates to something that I see a lot on X from our own base, one of the things that I think as conservatives we've got to learn to do is not and I think Danielle Smith, by the way, is doing a phenomenal job. So Jason did this amazing job of setting up this new entity, unifying the right, putting the UCP in a position to win. We won a landslide. Danielle's come in. She's doing a phenomenal job picking up that mantle. We need to continue to back the current premier, and we need to back each other, and we need to keep our guns as much as possible pointed out at the issues that are really, taking down the quality of life of Canadians, taking down the free speech of Canadians, et cetera, and stay focused. As easy as it is to fight in the locker room, we got to, I think, just re-gear our fight outside the locker room towards what's happening with this Liberal Party. Back Pierre, back the people that have put the time and the energy into building the conservative movement in the country, and just understand there's going to be a lot of ways that we don't agree with each other inside the tent, but we got to keep that tent as big as possible to start winning and reversing the disaster of this last, I call it lost decade. So yeah, I back Jason. He's a friend. Do we agree on a lot of things? Yes. Do we agree on everything? Absolutely not. But I think as conservatives, we've got to figure out a way. It's probably the same with Pierre. I don't know Pierre as well. I know him, but I'll back Pierre to the hilt. I want him to win. I want him to take down this government and replace it with a government and with people that can reverse the craziness on so many fronts of what's happened to this great country.
Okay, so that's, I think, fair for you to say. And some of the things that I would look, I think we're 90-10 as well. I agree with about 90% of what you said there, but maybe about 10% is where I'm going to highlight a couple of things. The
Sure.
conservative side, what I've noticed, is for accountability and truth. So we definitely want to maintain that integrity. That's what the other side has no problem circumventing. So they have no problem ignoring that part. So that gives them a little bit more unity on that side.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought of that before, because I've been often thinking about why is the left so easily keeping their team together when we're always fighting internally. And it may be a bit of a a sense of we're fighting for what we think is absolutely true, and they're just more accommodating because they've got more flexible positions in general. So I hadn't thought about it in that way, but you may be right on that in terms of the distinction. In other words, it's a feature that we tend to fight with each other more than the left does in your mind. Whereas for me, I think that's more of a bug, but I'll give you that.
Yep, and it's kind of like street ball, like you call your own fouls, right? Like, and you don't want to be a dirty team, right, at all. And and this is there's two types of criticisms. There's destructive criticism where you're trying to just destroy somebody, but then there's constructive criticism where actually you want them to be stronger and prop them up a bit more. And you've heard the term iron sharpens iron. That's kind of where some of this criticism comes from. It's not meant to, bring Danielle Smith down or anything like that. It's meant to make her even stronger. And that's kind of where some of us come from.
That goes to the heart of it. If the intention of somebody is to build and create and, make and, help us win and help protect kids from these crazy ideologies that are attacking them, these activist judges, et cetera. Like then I tolerate a whole lot of disagreement. The guy who's disagreeing with me right now on fighter jets, which, it is the kind of disagreement you want, because I actually want to get smarter on these things. I post it because it's exactly what I think, but a lot of times it's not settled, and I agree with you.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Jason Kenney ran into, right? So when
Yeah,
he was bringing in his COVID passports and stuff like that, it was his own base. I said, no, 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 no. That's the
that's right.
10% we don't want you to touch, right? And even you
Yeah.
agreed with that. And that wasn't to destroy him. It was to be stronger.
No.
We don't want to start giving ground that way.
Well, and he still won the vote. I mean, there's a lot going
He's
on there too, where
51.
I think just raw exhaustion and a lot of other stuff happening. And look, I think he was a critical part of the conservative comeback in Alberta, and I think the Premier Smith is doing a great job. I just want her to win by a wider margin next time and keep this incredible momentum going of economic and political freedom in the province.
Yeah, and I think you're not alone on that one for sure. And when it comes to subjects like protecting parents and children and putting kids back into school, she's got tremendous support, even though you see the NDP and the unions fighting it loudly, even the press helping them on that one. The support here is actually a lot larger than it looks like online. I can tell you that. I don't know many that actually supported keeping the kids outside of school.
No, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're fine with her using the notwithstanding clause, and I do want to kind of educate people on what the notwithstanding clause does. It just keeps the court out of the process, and it's the local court. It's not the Supreme Court. It's the court. So the Alberta King's Bench. It keeps them out of the process because the purpose of the notwithstanding clause in the charter was to not let the judiciary take over what the legislation is trying to do. By having one appointed unelected judge make a decision, change law, that's what it's meant to stop, especially if it's considered to be radical. And harming children 15 and under, hiding from parents, and also putting men into women's sports are considered radical by both sides. But this is one of the reasons why we shouldn't be doing it. It's pretty weird 100%. That people are still fighting for that.
Yeah, 100%. Look, we have a problem with rogue judges thinking, Alison Kuntz, who is the judge in this case, is not a queen. She doesn't get to override a duly elected legislature that is already, everyone is compassionate for these kids, and that compassion can take you in a couple different directions on this issue. But this judge is no queen. Her job is to review the legislative obligation to write laws that make sense in this space. The thing that makes she had to be overridden because she's wrong. The Supreme Court is wrong. They should be overridden as well. The Supreme Court on this latest case with this horrific situation with these two guys from Quebec that had evidence of child rapes from kids aged 4 to 10, over 1,000 pictures of crime on their laptops and phones. These two clowns were under criminal indictment under mandatory minimum. And if you talk about the war on kids coming from these jaded, cynical judges, I don't know where they're getting their philosophy from, but out of a desire to change the law, those 5 Supreme Court justices decided to evaluate a hypothetical case, not the case in front of them, which would have absolutely established the reason why the legislature had required a mandatory minimum sentence, right? The case in front of them absolutely buttressed the logic of the duly elected legislators that put that in place. These judges decided to invent a different case, a fantasy case that would allow them to rule that there could be a condition under which a charter violation might occur if somebody was found doing something that was nominally, considered child porn by some future justice, who wasn't going to use common sense, in this case, 2 kids sexting. And therefore they would throw out the law as it was applied to the case in front of them, which is a horrific, obvious obligation to provide a mandatory minimum. So the judges themselves are trying to create a little secret autocracy of dictators, kings that are in secret chambers that invent reasons why they can rewrite laws that were written through a really tough process of having to win elections, get elected, pass these laws, debate these laws, 3 readings, reviewed by the Senate, etc. And these judges just decide they can override it. Alison Kuntz has zero business being worried about whether or not the legislature has taken into account the due regard of the care of children. Of course they have. Here's the other thing that drives me nuts about this. she's pretending, as well as and other leftist activists, that there is some purpose behind doing this that just sort of extends the requirement of the legislature to really consider the case of these kids. Do you know in Sweden is more conservative than the Alberta government is on this issue? Finland. I mean, these are not paragons of deep conservative right-wing, conspiracy. The government of Finland, the government of Sweden, and the UK government under the Cass Review have all decided in the last 3 years that this whole gender affirming care thing is a euphemism for the complete denial of normal sexual identity formation, gender dysphoria, etc., and that they're doing exactly the wrong things. They're using chemical means or surgical means to destroy the lives of these kids in permanent ways. It's wrong. They found that the puberty blockers are deeply destructive, particularly bone density and leading to osteoporosis for life. Right? They found that the entire ideology is destructive. And Sweden and Finland now don't even permit this stuff for use except in highly restricted, carefully guarded scientific studies where you have to go through a whole battery of tests just to be included in the control, right? So Alberta is in the mainstream of the science on this. The US is already moving this direction. The moral panic element of the trans thing is collapsing in the US. And as usual, the left wingers in Canada will be like these Japanese fighters that were still found fighting on some weird island somewhere 20 years after the war ended. Their ideology is collapsing because it's sick. And it's rooted in this idea that somehow a child could have been born in the wrong body. And that just leads to all the worst possible sort of motives by ideologues or sexual activists or whatever with respect to kids. Leave the kids alone, right? And I think there's something about this dynamic over the trans issue and also what was happening on the child porn side, that somehow kids are under attack from a philosophy that trends towards treating sexual identity issues as if they're libertarian choices before you're actually of age to make those kinds of decisions for yourself. And it's grotesque because it leads into all kinds of horrific behavior, grooming, taking advantage, seeding kids' minds, over sexualizing their choices very early in life, where they still should have a scope of innocence to pretend to be who they are, etc. So this one makes me mad, and these judges have no business overriding legislatures.
Yeah.
Preach, brother. That's exactly what we say on this show as well. And I dissected that Supreme Court decision. You're correct. They put us a hypothetical scenario, which was an 18-year-old male, 17-year-old female dating. Everybody would agree that that's okay. And then they brought up the sexting portion of it. And here's what a lot of people who are not paying attention should pay attention to. First, it'd have to be reported if that ever happened.
Yeah.
Then goes to the police to see if whether or not they're going to investigate it. Then to the Crown. Then to the court, possibly a judge or a jury. Then to a conviction. These are all the steps that would need to happen before that scenario even hit the sentencing stage, because its entire Supreme Court decision was the sentencing mandatory portion. Once you've made it that far, whether or not there'd be a mandatory minimum of 1 year. But what they did is they bastardized the entire process themselves. As the Supreme Court said, hey, no, look, if they use sexting, boom, they're going to be in jail for a year. That's not how the system works, and they know it. So they're doing something completely different. And there's 5 hard drives I would like to take a look at. I would like to start there. There's only a certain type of person that wants to protect this activity, and these are people that maybe are too close to that activity.
Check the hard
because
drives.
why in the world would you want to protect that activity? And the last piece of this little rant of mine is it's meant to be a deterrent, so that anybody that's considering possibly even remotely getting involved in this would understand minimum a year if you go into this activity. So it's meant to be a deterrent. They removed that deterrent. Now I guarantee you there's a lot more of that activity happening because the Supreme Court came out and said that. So they're enabling. They're doing the opposite of what the justice system is supposed to be doing, which is deter activity. They're now enabling it. So that's kind of my rant on that one. When it comes to
the other reason for mandatory minimums, the other reason for those is because you get these weirdos who are judges who won't follow the actual obvious common sense application of the law. You're getting it all the time. Some of these activists decide that somebody's skin color makes them a victim, not a criminal. It's bizarre. They're sort of leftist anchoring around identity politics has led them to create these 2 or 3 tier justice systems that have no place in an open democracy led by a parliamentary decision. And these judges arrogate those decisions unto themselves. They try and make themselves into the lawgiver and the interpreter. And, you know, I wrote in my post, I studied law. I did a master's degree in law over in the UK. And I studied jurisprudence, which is basically the philosophy of law, or how law is supposed to be decided. And one of the original books of law is called Plato's Laws, written 2,400 years ago. And Plato has, in book 9, he talks exactly about this issue. And for him, this issue was so important that judges that were found to have been corrupting the law, and he called it corruption of the law. In fact, there's a Latin term for judges usurping the power of the lawgiver. That's the language that they use. And is that it was punishable by death. So judges would be punished by death if they were caught doing this, or if it was determined by the legislature that they had done it. So, you know, the notwithstanding clause is a nice, democratic, open-minded 2,500 years later way of dealing with, you know, the deep disagreement in the role of judges in an open democracy. But it was considered that important at the time, and Plato made it very clear. You know, this is the foundational book of law in republics and why it was so important. But he made it very clear that anything other than that led to judicial tyranny, which meant you had people meeting in secret, whose job it was to wear the referees' jerseys in civic life, would instead walk around not just the referees' jerseys, but also, you know, having their own puck and stick and deciding when they wanted to take a shot. Like, it's just not right. You know, it's wrong. And it was so wrong for him that it had to be punishable by death to prevent it from ever happening and destroying the original sort of momentum behind the idea of democracy. But yeah, we have a problem in Canada. We have a problem with activist judges, people that don't want to be in politics, but decide they love the feeling of legislating from the bench. And it's wrong, really wrong.
And then when you see things like the entire Supreme Court were vaccinated, juries had to be vaccinated to participate at one point, and then now poppies are not allowed in courtrooms because judges decide that kind of stuff. This is the wrong direction, and these are
they're political activists. They don't look. You get political activists in every single job. There's a broad political spectrum. You know, there may be more for reasons that we all understand in terms of psychology. Maybe more cops tend to be conservative than not. But you know, if you're a conservative cop, you don't just get to decide that you're just going to go around arresting left-wingers that commit crimes, right? You're not allowed to sort of bend your civic duty to the will of your political instincts. And when judges do this, it's deeply corrupting, it's terrible, and it scars the trust in the whole system. And the kinds of things they're doing is exceptionally dangerous. The second order effects of this stuff is exceptionally dangerous. Because it just leads people to say, you know what, I don't trust the system anymore. I'm going to take the law into my own hands. You start, you do something, you molest my child, and I find out you sent those pictures around, and I think some judge is going to give you a slap on the wrist. They're going to find your twisted body in a bush somewhere. Like, you forget it, right? And this is the problem. We need
justice.
Yeah, we need judicial clarity, transparency, certainty, and a close tie directly to the law as it's legislated. And if you don't like it, leave your robes behind, leave your secret chambers behind, and go get yourself elected and try having that fight with 300 odd other people disagreeing with you. It's a lot harder to get elected and to try and pass a law than it is to pretend that you have a special view of the world, that you're allowed wearing your robes to just decide in the course of doing what is supposed to be your actual job, which is interpreting the law, not writing it. And so it's bad. We got to call it out. And these judges have a lot to answer for right now in Canada because they've been getting away with it. The notwithstanding clause is just such a fantastic feature of Canadian democracy. I absolutely love it. And you don't know how important those things are until you see them applied in situations like this latest situation, where the will of the people of Alberta has overridden the will of Her Majesty Alliston Kunst.
I like how you said that. And to be clear, Bill 9 could be repealed if another government goes in there and passes legislation.
Sure, knock yourself out, but more than 80% of Albertans don't want big thug guys pretending to be women because they can't compete with other guys in a sport, so they can go crush the girls. It's a
Yeah.
joke. Gender
Absolutely.
dysphoria is a problem. You know, gender dysphoria is a psychological problem. You don't treat it by giving kids hard drugs that change their bone density and try and reverse the natural process of adolescence, or mutilating their bodies in ways that are totally irreversible after the fact. Doesn't help the kid with the gender dysphoria, and doesn't help anybody else that has to go along pretending that there aren't two sexes. This is insanity. This is the emperor's new
Exactly.
clothes.
It.
Why people wrote those stories, right? There are only two there's only two, biologically, there are only two sexes. Now, the left has come along partly because of this sick individual, Michel Foucault, who's had this philosophy that basically genderized Marxism back in the 70s and 80s. And that's become par for the course for the left now in terms of what you're supposed to read and understand at universities. And now the fruit that it's bearing in civil society is we've got this bizarre notion that some kid can sort of think there's something and then go be surgically Frankensteined into that thing. It doesn't work that way. You know, the world's made so there's two sexes. Now you can have lots of reasons to not be the sex you are, but you know, for kids, many of whom are still in an age of innocence, or many of whom are struggling with lots of other stuff in their lives, trauma, other things, maybe a not misunderstanding of their own sexual instincts and feeling uncomfortable in their body for whatever reason, need to be able to work those things through without having some weird creeps with a creepy ideology from France in the 70s sort of lurking around telling them, hey, maybe you're born in the wrong body and we can change that. It's bizarre, it's sick. And it's getting called
Like.
out everywhere. And you know what? It's not getting called out by people that are political. This is what's interesting about the trans issue. You got a bunch of people that are doctors, some of whom began the first gender affirming care philosophy in Sweden and Finland, that are now the biggest opponents of this stuff, saying this is actually, because what they noticed was it became a moral panic, especially with little girls. And so they've, you know, they did this entire evaluation, and it started actually in Sweden with something called the Corinne Institute, but it was the Cass Review in the UK that did it most comprehensively and has now thrown it all out. So, you know, so Alberta is now in the same zone as the UK, Finland, and Sweden, and the weird leftist activists are still hanging on to the W Path and Endocrine Society activists, who, by the way, are just using the same expert opinions that you see in so much of this left-wing activism. It's not subject to any actual scientific testing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we learned from Mia Hughes, who came on to talk about WPATH and its origins. 2019 or 2014 is when they pivoted from mental health to you must accept and affirm. There's actual
you got a
date
lot of
when he
people
changed it.
Yeah, sorry to talk over you, Jason. There's a little bit of a delay there.
No, all good. Totally all good. Now, what I want to do is kind of get into one more quick subject, and then we're going to jump into our private sections. And if you can stick around for another 15, 20 minutes, that'd be fantastic. Because I want to bring up one of your posts here, because I think the third notwithstanding clause is getting ready to go here, because regulators and the people who regulate professions, they've become a problem too. They become politically motivated. They're controlling their members through threats of removing licenses, requiring additional training, and exposing them for their speech. So Danielle Smith here is coming out with a new free speech defense to stop regulators from using your speech outside of the profession that's legal. She did make a distinction between illegal speech, like, you know, incitement of violence and stuff like that. So anything that falls under the criminal code stays there. But anything outside of the criminal code, you're free to speak. And if this is outside of your profession, your professional regulatory bodies should not be able to penalize you for it. And we saw this with Jordan Peterson and other people who've been targeted. And we had Jason Christoph on, and he calls this shooting a hostage. When they do something like that, like a big public thing where they go after one person to put everybody else into place, same type of thing here. And then here's your post talking about George Orwell.
Yeah.
So I'll read it out for the audience here that's listening. So if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. George Orwell, 1984, preface. And then you posted here, great to have an Alberta government with the courage to give Orwell's maxim full legal protection, and then crazy to live at a time when they have to do that because some leftists on a power trip hate dissent and call anything they do not like hate or misinformation.
Yeah.
So we've certainly seen this, and I suspect once this passes, she may have to use a notwithstanding clause again to stop radical judges from changing this.
Sure. Look, voluntary association. Look, I'm a little bit of I'm sort of libertarian conservative. I don't know how we want to use all these sort of framing devices for what the unified sort of theory is of what you think. But I like voluntary associations to be able to get together and decide what they want to do, create their own rules and live by them, right? Normally, I just think government can stay out. We need civil society institutions that operate in their own codes, and unless they do anything illegal, including whatever rules they apply to their people, it's fine. The difference with these institutions is they regulate the ability of any individual to actually participate in their chosen profession. So I had some people respond to this quote being like, "Oh, well, you should be," and so I think people need to be clear on this. This isn't like, the Fat Men's Volleyball Association, right, which has its own sort of whatever
I'm a
code, right?
captain, by the way.
Oh,
Oh man, I'm sorry I chose the one you're a part of, Jason.
At 6'3", 220 pounds, I'm going to be in
So
that league.
does that get in trouble? You're like, that jerk DM'd me, and then it turns out he like,
It's all good.
uses okay. So what I think people have to understand is corporate HR and these associations and these it's the governing elements of these associations. It's just like the teachers unions, right? My dad was a teacher, right? He was not some crazy NDP backing left-wing guy with a political agenda. He was a great teacher. He loved to be a teacher. In his life, he was a man of faith. He was conservative. He would vote for, the most conservative candidate. But his teachers union would speak as if he was one of their, army of hard left supporters of whatever that teachers union wanted to do or say. And so the people at the top tended to have become really politicized. They tended to also be quite political, right? So the people that sort of run to be in these positions of sort of the council that's going to govern, the psychologists of Canada or the Law Society, et cetera. And they get on a power trip, and their power trip, again, like the judges, right? They have no right to tell people that if you have different politics than me, we're going to figure out a way to make those politics considered verboten, illegal. We're going to restrict your speech, right? So the same people that will wear rainbow t-shirts and go on marches or orange shirt or whatever, right? These people that will uniformly line up and make personal political statements all the time will suddenly declare that any personal political statements that don't conform to their particular leftist ideology will be considered verboten, wrong, will disbar you, right? And so Jordan Peterson's okay because he doesn't care. He's got a much bigger name than the Canadian Psychology Association or whatever it was that tried to like slap him on the wrist. He can walk away. But 99% of the people in that association who depend on certification to do their job cannot walk away. So they have to walk around pretending that they are closet leftists, that they will never say anything the left disagrees with, that they have to go around using pronouns, all this other BS that's connected to a hard left ideology and philosophy of identity. It's got nothing to do with people's day jobs. And in the case of psychologists, it's actually deeply destructive, contrarian to the kind of perspectives they should have when they're trying to deal with these situations. So this is super important. And again, the premier's leading from the front, doing a phenomenal job. And I hope she does invoke the notwithstanding clause. Look, if the left wing thinks that they can take captive shared spaces like professional associations and take captive the bench of this country through activist lawyers and judges, then you know what? That's exactly what the notwithstanding clause exists to arrest. It exists to perpetuate the freedom of Canadians, the freedom of Albertans in the face of weirdo activists. It doesn't matter if those weirdo activists are on the right or the left. That's a protective clause. And I love it for that. So yeah, if some judge decides that some, association of people is allowed to set their own language codes, then yeah, override it, because the reality is those language codes are being set always in and only in one direction against the free expression of ideas that are essential for us to be better as a society.
100%. And you use the right term there, voluntary association. Some of these are not voluntary. If you want to be in the law profession, you have to go through the Law Society. If you want to be a teacher in Alberta, you have to go through the ATA, and you have to be part of it. It's not even an option. So what do you think about right to work? Maybe adding that on top of this is another layer, because that makes all of this voluntary at that stage.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think that's probably the next degree of freedom. I will say this, though, Jason. I think one of the reasons the left is so intense in Canada right now and the media is so complicit is because they're actually really worried. And honestly, I got to say this, some part of me doesn't know why they're so worried, because we seem to have trouble getting our act together on the right, but they're worried, and I think it's partly because they're losing the culture war in general. Because sanity is prevailing, science is prevailing on the trans stuff. I mean, these people will be the last ones standing. The world, fortunately, is healing on that front. Kids are going to get actual care they need instead of this weird, crazy psychology of groomers and weirdos that from the Foucault school. And that's super important, right? And I think that edge in terms of how speech and the attempt to control what people say and do has become paramount, because the more that people encounter divergent viewpoints that enhance people's personal freedom, enhance the idea of the exchange of ideas and dissent, has a great role to play in a healthy society, and also just freer individuals that have freer minds, can think better about their own lives, themselves, what they want. That's essential. We have to fight for that and protect it. But the good news is it's such a good thing, and obviously good thing, that I think they stand to lose. And you see right now in so many fronts. We saw this with the climate change stuff. That's shifting against them too in a big way, right? I mean,
Oh, for sure.
that's really changing, and partly because of what happened, sadly, in Ukraine. People started to realize this whole, Paris Accord thing was tying the hands behind the back of all the NATO countries, while everybody else just went ahead and, created the energy they needed. And in Russia's case, put all of NATO on a short leash in Europe and dominated. So, the real world and science and other things have a way of helping people sort out their political philosophy. But notwithstanding, clause is a really great function for us. We just have to make sure we win the next election in Alberta, and we start to win some of these municipal elections in Alberta, so we can continue to create a much different, better, freer economy and society.
Yeah, I think Greta Thunberg herself was a nail in the coffin for that, because she came out and said, "We only got 5 years, and we're all done." And then
5 years later,
and then it never
5 years
happened.
later,
So a lot of
she's
people
in
were thinking,
Gaza. Yeah,
exactly.
no,
yeah. So that
no,
may have been the best
that's
thing
a
to
sad
happen.
story, the Greta Thunberg story. But yeah,
The exploitation of her as well. I think that people don't even realize that too. From such a young age, he became the poster child, the spokesperson. She was just a child, and now I'm sure she's even aware of. Oh, it is 5 years later. Let's
She
go.
moved on. She moved on, just like everybody else. Even Bill Gates came out and said, "Climate is not our problem anymore. It's human rights." We're gonna talk about that now.
Bill Gates.
Yeah, he
Well,
did.
you know what's interesting about Bill Gates? I'll say this, and there's a shout out actually to a Canadian intellectual, Václav Smil, in in I think it's Manitoba, is one of the best writers on climate issues. And Gates became kind of a disciple of this guy over time, and he is just straight up in the way that he assesses those issues. So, every once in a while you get somebody that comes up with the ideas first and is not so much political as just saying, here's the reality. And Gates quoted him off and was listening to him, and I was always confused how Gates could have the views he had and still be quoting Smil. But he's now come fully around. But he's come around to truth and science and facts, climate facts. Here's a fun fact for you. Do you know what Canada's global GHG emissions were in 2016 when they took over the government?
No.
708 megatons. So we've had a decade of climate conferences and taxes and regulations and being backwards in terms of our ability to go to global capital markets with our energy. Do you know what our global GHG emissions were in 2024?
710.
712.
Wow.
You
And we have a lot more
almost
population
nailed
since
it.
then.
So what did we actually get? So when they already knew, this is the Liberal Party, when they already knew after 5 years that they had done absolutely net zero to do anything for the planet with this crazy domestic emissions strategy, which makes no sense when our cleaner energy could reduce global emissions by more than our total carbon footprint if we could ship it, right? And instead of that, when they knew that they were missing completely, what did they do? They went to COP, I think it was 27, and announced that they were going to raise the target from a reduction of 30% to 40 to 45%. This is a big announcement they went out with. We're going even higher. They already knew they'd only moved the dial by less than 1%. And they went out and made a big announcement about going even higher. And so this is a PR game. This is a control game. This is an attempt to keep moving the dial. And we believe in climate action. What climate action? We're up 4 megatons. Do you know who in that same period? Do you know who lowered more carbon emissions than anyone else on the planet?
China.
The USA.
Yeah,
No,
US.
China has added more carbon emissions than anyone else on the
I
planet.
know. That's the thing. Like,
But
China's only just
what?
going up.
But you know what? Let's talk about that for a second. Why has China added all the carbon emissions from coal?
Well, they're building energy and they're bringing their people out of poverty and industrializing like crazy.
Yeah, they're gonna take the equivalent of 10 Canadas in population. 400 million people are going to move them out of grinding poverty into a sustainable middle class existence over the next 15 years, right? So they're like, look, if you're not going to ship us your natural gas, we can cut carbon emissions from a coal-fired grid in half. Okay, 10 times the size of Canada over the next 15 years. And by doing that, you would remove more than 3 times the total carbon footprint of the entire nation of Canada, because all emissions are global. They don't like hang out at borders seeing which country's done the right thing, right? Then help us out. If you're not going to help us out, we're just going to keep buying the coal from Australia and burning that because we want secure grids, because our kids have every right to be told to do their homework at 10 o'clock at night before the next class in the morning, in an apartment with the light on, with some aircon, same way as your kids have had that right. And if you're going to deny us that right, you know what? Stuff it. We're not going. They're not going to COP anymore. They didn't go down to Brazil to watch the clean cut rainforest event, right?
Yeah.
They've had it with this, and they were never paying attention anyway. They'd sign anything and just ignore it. Whereas Canada was pretending to be a bunch of Boy Scouts, making commitments that were impossible to keep, acting snarky towards the United States the entire time for withdrawing from the Paris Accord, while the US was reducing their emissions more than we were, substantially, not hitting any of the results. And by the way, where's our intrepid press on this? We got lectured on climate forever. So where is the press story on how the Liberal climate plan has gone nowhere, net zero in 10 years? Where's the story? What's going on?
They weren't paid for that story.
Yeah, we're going to be jumping into that one with Rodney Palmer next Friday, previous CBC CTV reporter, host. And I had a great conversation with him yesterday about this subject. Where is the press? The state funded and the state aligned. And he's got a whole bunch of receipts for that one. So tune in next Friday for that episode. We're going to jump over to our private area. So hang on for a little bit longer. We extended our public one because you're just an awesome guest. And I really appreciate this. And by the way, check your schedule. We're going to have you back because this was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Last comment for Alberta and Canada.
Me? We're going to win. We're going to come back. I had to speak about the separatist stuff in Alberta. I think we take Canada with us. Number one, by being an example of freedom in every way: economic freedom, political freedom, personal freedom, and building that right in Alberta. And then the second thing is we're going to take Canada with us. We have an extraordinary nation that is naturally the wealthiest democracy on the planet, and we should be setting it free.
I heard a collective cheer out of Ontario when you said that. Like, yes, take us with you. There's a whole bunch of people that feel that
You
way.
bet. All these
Yep.
Canadians, we all fought for this place. My grandfather's an Ontario guy. He fought in Burma. Like I have a very strong sort of instinct. Look, if push comes to shove and we have to separate, that'll be sad. But then Alberta will be the Monaco of North America. Could live with that.
Yep.
Let the rest of the country be the France of North America. We'll just have the Monaco piece with our trade with the US. But right now, there's a lot to fight for the whole country.
So I wonder if we'll get a Grand Prix then out of this when we're done.
That'd be cool.
Oh, I think we should do that anyway. I mean, I think we should start going global as a province. We have the right to. That's the great thing about being federalist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll have another conversation on that one. Are you back in Alberta in January, maybe around the 10th?
Yeah, I will be. I'll be back in Alberta then. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's chat. We may have you in person. We'll have to continue that conversation.
Yep.
All right, David. So hang on. We're going to play our outro, but then we'll go into our private side and we'll have another chat there. Okay? Can you hang out?
Okay, I'll hang on.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, folks. So as a public, we didn't extend it because that was pretty cool. So go ahead and to go to thelevineshow.com to subscribe. To subscribe to our members area. That'd be great to have you there to become a member. And we're going to continue this conversation there. And make sure you share this out, like it, do all that kind of stuff. And go stick it into the lefty corners of the internet. That'd be fun to get this episode out there to them.
Yeah, and just there is no mashup show for you tomorrow evening, but
it's every second Saturday now.
But you got one in the morning. There's going to be a panel that you're doing 10 a.m.
10 a.m. Mountain. And it's not necessarily a mashup. It's a panel about Bill 9 and why it's necessary. So we'll be speaking to people who are in those communities and they support Bill 9. Yeah.
Otherwise, everyone have a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you Monday morning.
Love you all very much, and God bless.